Let me read to you a passage from the 12th chapter of St. Mark's Gospel, verses 13 to 17. It's the Gospel for Tuesday after the 9th Sunday of Ordinary Time. St. Mark writes, "Later they sent some of the Pharisees and Herodians to Jesus to catch him in his words. They came to him and said, 'Teacher, we know that you are a man of integrity. You are not swayed by men, because you pay no attention to who they are, but you teach the way of God in accordance with the truth. Is it right to pay taxes to Caesar or not? Should we pay or should we not?' But Jesus knew their hypocrisy. 'Why are you trying to trap me?' he asked. 'Bring me a denarius and let me look at it.' They brought the coin, and he asked them, 'Whose portrait is this, and whose inscription?' 'Caesar's,' they replied. Then Jesus said to them, 'Give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's.' And they were amazed at him." That's from Mark chapter 12, verse 13 to 17. Our Lord refers to God and Caesar. So we are led to think of the relation between the two. There are two things that are natural to man: society and religion. Man congregates and lives with others, and he prays and worships with others too. Man has looked to his neighbours for their fellowship, and he has looked to the gods for their fellowship too. In living with others, he requires and accepts civil authority, otherwise he discovers there is anarchy. He might overthrow the form of civil authority he finds over him, but he does not dispense with civil authority as such. At times man abandons religion, but this is uncommon, except for the aberration that is the modern secular day. Usually religion is the warp and woof of man's life and of society too. Just as social living involves some form of authority, so does religion usually involve some form of authority or priesthood, for religion is not only personal but social. At times the religious authority or priesthood is the business of the state, as with the classical Romans. Often it is separate. In the religion of the Iranians, Parsiism, Zoroastrianism, Mazdaism, it seems there existed from the beginning a special priestly caste. It is impossible to summarize thousands of years of the relations between the civil and religious authorities in the life of man, but what is usually frequent is contact between the two. Indeed, there have been special moments of contact. Take one or two examples. A special phenomenon of the period before Jesus Christ was classical Greece. That culture was to have a profound effect on the world, and in particular on the West. A special step in the story of its influence was the phenomenon of Alexander the Great, who brought Greek civilization to what was the Persian Empire. When Alexander was laying siege to Tyre, Josephus informs us, he was refused help by Jerusalem. Having conquered Tyre, he advanced against Jerusalem, but was met by Jadus the high priest and the other priests in the habits of their order, and the citizens of the city following in concourse in a great gesture of peace. The sight won over Alexander. Whether Josephus got his facts right is not here to the purpose. It is taken as a moment representing the meeting of authorities of the two orders of human life, the social and religious. I would suggest, though, that the greatest moment in human history of a meeting of these two orders was the meeting between Pontius Pilate and Jesus Christ. The city of God and the city of man. God and Caesar. In the plan of God for the world, those governing the city of man have responsibility for ordering things temporal according to the will of God. There are those, though, who have the responsibility of ordering the life of religion, guiding consciences, and leading society to fellowship with God. When the Son of God became man, he did not proceed to assume temporal dominion, which was certainly within his power. He withdrew to the hills to pray when the people wished to make him king, after having seen him so effortlessly meet their temporal need for food. When he was asked by someone in the crowd to order that person's brother to give him his share of the inheritance, Christ said that this was not his role. He then proceeded to warn his audience against avarice of any kind. But the question repeatedly arises, how are relations to be conducted between the two orders, and specifically between the two authorities, civil and religious? All of this brings us to our gospel today that I read earlier from Mark chapter 12, verses 13 to 17. Our Lord's enemies wished to ensnare him in some imprudence, and so accuse him of either political sedition or of encouraging a departure from life under the one and only God. You are not swayed by men, our Lord's questioner said, because you pay no attention to who they are, but you teach the way of God in accordance with the truth. Is it right to pay taxes to Caesar or not? Should we pay or should we not? In response, our Lord lays it down that Caesar, the civil authority in general, has a role and a true authority under God. At that great moment when Christ stood before Caesar, as represented by Pilate, he told Caesar that the power he had came from above, so the disciples of Christ must respect it, as did their divine founder unto death, despite the miserable use of this power by the otherwise insignificant Pilate. In general, what Caesar requires of the citizenry in the organization of social life is to be respected. When Augustus decreed a census of the Roman world, Mary and Joseph obeyed. They travelled to Bethlehem to register. Thus were the scriptures fulfilled, that the Messiah would come from Bethlehem. But now, all too often, Caesar refuses what is due to God. And as Caesar will sooner or later learn, God will be the victor. 3 centuries after the death of Christ, the empire was declared Christian. In our gospel today that I read earlier, our Lord does answer a specific question about the two orders of authority. The question was, is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? This is a very general question. It does not ask about the degree of taxation, nor how the money was being used. It was simply, may the religious Jew pay the civil tax? Yes, Christ says, he may, because the civil authority has a right to govern the earthly city. This earthly authority is to be respected. But of course, this very directive is a manifestation of the authority of God. In respecting earthly authority, the religious person, and specifically the disciple of Christ, is respecting the authority of God. God is always the supreme authority. As St. Thomas More said on the scaffold, I am the King's good servant, but God's first.